All right, we're back. We're going to work on geometry for the overload level editor. I'm going to go over this entire thing, show what all of these buttons do, and then also show you the tunnel builder. We're also going to do a quick recap of some basic functions and a quick preview of the texture stuff because we want to have a different texture. All right, so let's use texture mode instead of solid. And we'll do texture wire. Let's select all those. Quickly bring up texture list, and let's do that texture. There we go. Okay, that's texturing for you. What I did was I marked all the faces, and then I assigned a texture to them, and I used the texture list. Good. Okay, so I noticed in our last video that when I pushed insert, it didn't show up on the command list up here. So I'm gonna, or up here is where you guys will see it. So we're going to use I this time, which is actually already there for laptops which don't have an insert key. So instead of insert, you can use I for all of these commands. So whenever you see an I, you can also substitute insert, which is what I normally do. But I'll try to remember to use I this time. Okay, so let's go over movement one more time and scaling and other stuff like that. So we've created this side. We can move it in and out with right mouse button. Now, if I hold down shift, that's no grid movement. It aligns to the view. So if I do it up here, there you go. That's how movement works. Now I'm doing it without shift, so it's attaching to the grid. So now if we want to rotate, let's scale. Let's do scaling first. Okay. We're holding down control and scaling the face. It scales in the plane of the side that you're scaling from. There we go. All right, so let's do it from this view as well. This does it generally. There we go. There is a little bit of you'll notice it's not entirely smooth. It's doing it like 1.1 times when I'm doing it without shift, but I can hold down control and shift, and it will also scale in and out more smoothly with no snapping at all. All right, now let's actually get rotating going. To rotate, we hold down Alt and do the mouse button, right mouse button. Just like with scaling, it's based on what view you have selected or that you're accessing this function in. And in case you haven't guessed yet, you can hold down Alt and Shift, and it'll do it without grid snapping or snapping on. I think by default it does it 15 degrees. Let's snap that. And we should also go over keys do the same thing. So this is numpad. Let's see. Okay, those keys are showing up. So you can see what I'm doing. Shift plus these doesn't actually show up correctly, so we won't do that. That's for moving textures anyway. If I hold down Control and do the numpad, does nothing for that one. Let's see. There's a way. Okay, so Alt does minor movement. It does a quarter the amount of movement as normal. That's a quick way of doing fine movement. Shift is for textures. Control Shift is also for textures. And then let's make sure. So, just a quick recap. When you want to use a keyboard, you can use it for movement, but not for rotation or scaling. And if you want to do rotation or scaling, use Control for scaling and Alt for rotation. And with all of these functions, holding down Shift for the mouse makes it not use the grid. That's really good when you want to do a cave especially. Let's go back to basic geometry. And now we're going to go over all of these functions. All right, the first one is copy and paste. So if I want, let's make something that's not the default segment so you can actually tell what I'm doing. Move that up. All right, I do insert, see it's okay. So we've created a little geometry where you can actually tell that I'm copying and pasting it and not just pushing insert. All right, so we've got this segment copied. You mark it. You select the side that you want to have the relative paste from, and then you push Control C. And then when I want to paste it, I select a different side you want it to attach to when you paste it, and you hit Control V. Now by default, this side is not joined because you might want to move this segment up or down or somewhere else. If you want to join it, hit Shift plus J, and that will remove the side on both sides. Now every segment has to be connected to other segments. You want to be able to access it. There is one game object that lets you warp between different areas, but generally your whole level has to be connected. Otherwise you won't be able to access it. So let's do more copying and pasting. Let's just copy this whole section. Now one thing I want to show you is if I select that face, I'm using X again to cycle through the faces, or the sides of a segment. Sides and faces are basically the same thing. Now I copy it and then paste it. It's over there because the relative side with this one, it aligns it to the side that I'm pasting, and that happened. And maybe that's what you want, or maybe not. Again, I selected the side I wanted and hit Shift J to join, and they were not quite in the spot. And the side was there and I didn't want it to be. All right, let's do another example of Shift J. So now I've extruded twice and there's this wall in between. Don't want that wall there, so select the side, Shift J. Another thing you can do, let's say you create another set segments. Let's use this other button down here called Isolate Marked. So this will basically copy these segments, delete them, and repaste them so that they're separated from everything else. We did that. But now you can tell they're separated, and if I select them, they're no longer connected. But let's say I want to find something. Let's move it up a little further apart. I need to show how this works. Even further, actually. I'm marking all the segments on the keyboard, slide them across, insert, and now we've got this gap there. And I know I want it to join here, so I'm going to mark that side, select that side I want it to join, and hit Shift J. And it'll join those two up. Now you can get some weird twisting or something if your sides are not too, or kind of in a weird orientation, so you got to be a little careful sometimes. But generally, if the sides are close and the vertices for the side kind of line up, it'll work correctly. All right, so now let's go over more of this stuff. We've done copy, we've done paste at side. Paste at side with entities does the same thing as paste at side, but it just copies the entities too if there were entities in the original segments. Now paste at origin, let's copy these segments again, and let's do paste at origin. You'll notice it created the segments in the same spot. So what it does, it just takes wherever the segments were originally and puts them there. It ignores whatever face you have selected, whatever side you have selected, and it puts them at the origin. So if I copy this whole thing, delete everything, paste at origin, just puts them back where they were. And this one is pretty obvious, paste at origin with entities. Now let's do paste X. Let's delete stuff here. let's say I want to copy those segments there and have them here as a symmetrical part of the level on the other side. So I'm going to do paste X. This is the top view. We know X is left and right, and Z is forward and back. So if I did paste Z, it would paste them mirrored along the Z axis, which is kind of the center of the world. Is this slightly brighter white line on the grid. So I'm going to do paste X so they appear on the other side. Now again, they are not automatically joined. You can do that yourself. One other way to do that is to go to side mode. I press tab to go to side mode, or you can cycle through up here. Mark everything, or just the sides that you want to join. Oh, I guess I never covered that before, but I can use left mouse button to drag and mark objects. That works in all these views. Drag and mark with left mouse button. Now, or I can do shift space just like everything. Now this, before we're doing join side, which is shift J. Join all marked will join all sides that happen to be next to each other if they're marked. We do that, and now there's no more wall there. Okay. Okay, so we're going to show off. Let's delete some segments that we don't want. Remove the segments, mark them all, move them forward. I don't want to copy that one. Copy them all, and back to those. Let's do paste Z, and they appear mirrored along the Z axis. Okay, so let's say we want to flip them. Flip them back. Let's do flip X, and they should do nothing essentially, but if we move it here, we do flip X, we'll flip it across the X axis. All right, so all these functions are pretty obvious what they do. When you do the flipping, all these segments have to be isolated or separate from what they are flipping around. When I do flip now, it says marked segments must be isolated to flip them. All right, so again, to isolate the marked segments, we select them, and hit isolate marked, and then they're separate from everything else. Okay, so let's go over these cool little functions here. So there's 2-way, 5-way, and 7-way splits. We'll show all those. So 2-way split basically takes the side that you're selected on and the opposite side and creates a segment halfway along that. So if I have this side selected, it's going to create a segment halfway along this split. Insert it here. Let's just do it. There it goes. And we can do it again and again and again. I don't know if you'd ever want to create that many segments that quickly, but you can do it if you want. All right, so 5-way is a completely different beast. Let's get a nice big segment so you can see how it works. And we're going to actually isolate this segment. Okay, so 5-way. The 5-way is going to create a split so that there's a segment in the middle and then 4 segments around it. And it'll do this using the side you have selected as one of the sides that'll be split in 5-way. Push 5-way, and there we go. Now if I do 5-way again, create more segments in the middle. So let's go back. Let's use one of our other functions. So if I wanted to join those, I could hit Shift J, but if I want to add a segment there, you connect with segments. We're doing that so we can show how 5-way works. So 5-way will work just fine because there's nothing changing here. But if there is something changing, if you do 5-way with this face selected, or that one. Let's see what happens. This. Okay. Now when we do 5-way, it does bad stuff. Let's do it on the other side. Still does bad stuff. So you want to make sure when you do 5-way that you're not doing 5-way a side that is connected, because that leads to bad things. Let's try one more time. Hopefully it doesn't crash. It doesn't crash, but it also doesn't create what you wanted. It's actually got an infinitely thin segment here. That's bad. That's bad. That's bad. When you select something and you only see flat box like that, that means you have invalid segments, and it's not going to like that in the game. Let's try to go back. All right, we're back. Okay, so 7-way is much safer because it just isolates everything in 3 dimensions and creates a box in the middle. Kind of hard to explain exactly, but segment there, there, top, there, and one more. Pushing N now to advanced segment. Just like this one, push N. So now there are 7 segments. You can sort of see it a little easier if we select the middle one. And delete it. All right. So those are just some nice shortcuts for breaking up your segments more. We showed connect with segment, but let's do it one more time because it's worth knowing how to do it. Let's say we want, here's a quick little thing, control inserts. And let's say I want a segment between those two. Mark one side, select the other, and do connect with segment. And let's say I wanted to split that up 2-way. So there's lots of ways you can create geometry quickly. Let's merge overlapping verts. This isn't something you normally need to worry about, but if you're working with vertices a lot, you can sometimes get phantom verts that don't actually do anything. I'm trying to remember what sort of functions cause those to be created, but if you get some vertices that don't actually do anything, I think this function will. Let's find out. Well, I get these to do. That one does. Well, there are some functions that will create phantom verts if you get some of those hit merge overlapping verts. All right, so mark coplanar, something we covered before, but let's just show it again. Say I want to select the whole floor, one piece of the floor, mark coplanar. And that has a shortcut key, which is Shift Q. And it'll work on any side like this. If you have some sort of floors like this that are kind of flat but not quite, you hit mark coplanar, it doesn't work. You can increase the tolerance angle here. And now it works. All right, and we got an extra face there too. Okay, so mark walls. A little bit harder to explain, but it'll basically select all the sides that are roughly the same vertical alignment and also straight up and down, or mostly straight up and down. We selected all, we did mark walls and select all those there. A little more easy to see if we do this. No, let's not do that. Let's do this. Control insert. Say I wanted to change all the textures here or move all these up and down. Control Q is the shortcut to do that. Or if I want to select those. There's lots of useful ways this can be used. Say you just want it to be a little outcropping there. Control Q, and then you can change the texture or do whatever you need to do to it. All right, so let's do one more. I'm going to do a quick texture. That's an obvious text. It's not. Okay. Let's say we've got this texture used in a few places. Get out of here. And we want to select all the textures of that type that are connected. We just hit Q and it does that. This is really good when you have caves or when you just have a floor that's already kind of textured and you want to do quick modifications afterwards. Because sometimes Shift Q doesn't quite do what you want. Sometimes Control Q doesn't quite do what you want. And there's also Q, which selects all the textures, all the sides of this that have the same texture that are connected. I do that on here. And notice these are only connected to each other, so only selected those. Here it selects all those, but not the ones in the middle because those aren't connected. Okay. Mark wall straight. Okay, so extrude length. That just controls how far this goes when you extrude. If you need to do real fine geometry inserts, or if, I generally use this, I generally leave it at 4. But if I have a curved area and I wanted to have a standard size segment or a shorter segment or something like that, I'll generally mess with it then. Insert advance, when we insert a segment, it'll automatically advance. If we turn that off, it stays where we are. I generally leave that on now. Side select. Okay, this is a good one to look at. So right now I'm only selecting sides that are visible. That means I click through. I don't get these sides even though they're there. I can change how that works. Be solid. So now I can select faces that are facing away from me that are not visible, and all. Okay, front, similar to visible, except it'll pretend that all sides are visible. Kind of hurts your brain to think about what it's going to select, but you can select anything. You keep clicking, it'll just cycle through all the things that are selectable at that point on the screen. One way to do it. This can be good for editing. Oh yeah, we're getting everything now. I have a hallway and I'm going to select a bunch of the sides. You can see it cycling through here on the bottom. Yeah. So I generally leave that on just visible, but if you want to use the other modes, they're definitely available there. All right, tunnel builder. This is a cool way to build tunnels and curves and stuff like that. Let's start with the basic functions of a tunnel. Say I know I want a tunnel straight. I know I want to have 10 segments. I can just create a tunnel. That's the default settings. Kind of boring, but we can add a slope. Now let's do it. Whoa, slope in the X direction goes to the right. Slope in the Y direction goes up. Do a smooth slope. Smooth, like it says, it starts slowly, gets to a max slope, and then evens out at the end. Right. We can also scale it. So let's say we want it to be much wider at the end. Oh, I still have my smooth slope, which is cool. So you can combine these settings in all sorts of different ways. Mid-twist amount. This is an interesting one. So what this does, let's add more segments so it's a little less jerky. All right, so this kind of creates a spiral, but it's not a real spiral. Look how it curves up to 90 degrees and then curves back. You can create some cool abstract geometry this way. We're really into that kind of stuff. Let's go back. Are we going to be making back? There we go. All right, and then let's look at these other ones. Smooth and twist. This makes an actual twist that sticks at the end. It's not all that different, but it gives it a little more flexibility. And then linear twist basically is the same thing, except it starts and ends abruptly. Yeah, you can kind of see the difference there. It just immediately starts twisting, whereas the smooth one had a smooth twist into it. Again, good for sort of abstract geometry or caves or stuff like that. Now noise. I haven't used these noise functions in a while. Let's find out what happens. We're not going to do Z. It does what it says. Create some noise in the geometry. Let's turn up the twist. Add some smoothing. All right, so these functions down here aren't terribly useful, but if you want to use them, they're there for sort of creating caves and other stuff like that. All right, so we've covered a lot of the basics of a tunnel. You can also change the length of the segments that we're creating, so they're giant. It's a very long tunnel. So we're going to right. There we go. Need to see more of this. All right, so now we're going to go to arc. These are the two modes, tunnel and arc. Arc is the more interesting one. Arc lets you do basically a circle. So we have the segments, which is affected by the per full arc. So if I have a 10 segment thing with a full arc of 20, that's going to go 180 degrees. That uses 10 segments to go 180 degrees. And radius is 20 from the center of the side that we have selected. Let's make a much finer curve. There we go, much smoother. So we can also modify that by all these things here. Let's go. So this setting here is per full arc. We want to go all the way around. Quite the spiral. Bam. There it goes. This is good for spirals and other stuff like that. We can also do smooth slope with this one. Tried this in a while, so let's see how it turns out. There it is, nice and smooth start to it, and it ends smoothly as well. Now notice this smooth slope stuff doesn't get affected by the number of segments. It'll always just do the smooth slope for 100 or 360 degrees. So if you do this with segments set to 30 instead, it's not smooth here, it's at the maximum slope. So just be aware that smooth slope might not be quite what you're expecting. All right. So this is one of those functions that requires a lot of undo. And it's also, I think this is the function that you'll find. It's some geometry editing. This is also where you'll get extroverts created. Tunnel, nice and smooth. There we go. Okay. So when you use this function, you're getting extra verts created. You can get rid of those by doing merge overlapping verts. Now I cannot select a vert that is basically invisible or unused. Okay, so that's the basics of the tunnel builder. We can use all these other functions when we're doing a tunnel. And one other thing I want to show about this, let's go the other direction. Actually, we'll go this one. So right now the arc direction is right, but I can go left, slope. Oh, you see what we did there? We had 4 faces selected, so it did double curve. That's kind of cool, even if I didn't quite mean to do it, but maybe you will. All right, I'm gonna just select these 2 sides and mark them. You can also go down. Down again, what direction is that? Still is actually down. You can also go up. Now this is something you don't want to do, having segments overlapping each other like this. This would be bad for the game, and it would not like that very much. I guess you can try, but it's not recommended. There's no support for 4D levels, which means these things actually do overlap. The geometry will be there in both, no matter where you come from. Yeah, so that is the tunnel builder. Let's got one more thing to go over, and that's the connections. Let's say I want tunnel to go from there over to here, and I don't want to figure out the math of like, okay, how long is the radius need to be and blah blah blah. So I can go up here and do create connection, and that's a little bit harsh, so let's reduce the handle length. Do it again. There we go. All right, so the segment size is roughly 5. This is not an exact amount. If we want it to be smoother, we'll just reduce that 2.5. And this is modified by the selection handle length. So now we want to actually make this go higher again. Just how the math works internally. There we go. That's kind of tunnel that we might want. I prefer not to use these except in cases of caves, because this is not a actual perfect curve, and if you're trying to do anything beyond a flat tunnel like this, you'll have trouble with doing decals and texture alignment and stuff like that. But in this case, it works fine. All right, I think that is it for the advanced geometry part of this section. You can use all these tools to create geometry in all sorts of different ways. You'll notice that there are no real details on these because we have not used the decals, which are over here on the right side. Yeah, so we'll see you next time for texturing. Thanks for joining us.